Hello everybody and welcome to SpaceWeek Live for Sunday, May 2nd, 2021. Forgot what day it was. Yeah, so we had a busy week. Let's dig into it. If I can figure out what I'm doing here. First of all, welcome, thank you. This is a live Q&A session as always. If you have any questions, please go ahead and tag my name in the chat. Just say raw space or at raw space. It'll highlight my name for me, and we'll make sure to get it on the question list. All right, so looking back at the previous week, on Sunday, an Arianespace Soyuz launched from Vostochny Cosmodrome in far eastern Russia with the OneWeb 6 batch of satellites for that constellation. Let's check out the launch real quick.
So the satellites are warm and cozy inside the fairing, and we are ready to go. You can see that we're just a few seconds from launch. Let's follow these together. And we have liftoff of Soyuz ST-31 mission. It's very exciting. There's always a bit of tension in these moments. And we are launching in plane 5 today of our 12-plane constellation. There's still a long way to go. 4 hours journey before all the 36 satellites will be released. Right now, the boost
was a beautiful launch with a whole lot of commentation over the top of it. I'm glad that the OneWeb project was did not die, because they did go bankrupt last year, but they were rescued / resurrected by the British government, interestingly. And so the British government will be a satellite internet provider in competition with, well, it's not quite the same customer footprint, but sort of in competition with SpaceX. Then on Monday, a ULA Delta IV Heavy launched the NROL-82 reconnaissance satellite, or spy satellite, for the National Reconnaissance Office.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket carrying the NROL-82 mission for the National Reconnaissance.
Well, let's check out that again. I wasn't even, I get so busy during streams that a lot of times I don't even watch what's going on, because I'm multitasking, I'm monitoring the chat, and I'm trying to make sure that all the right sound is in there, that, you know, and that the video feeds are correct and everything. So a lot of times I don't even get to watch the launches. So let's check out the fireball from this Delta IV Heavy. So we didn't get to see the flamey side, which is generally on the far side of the vehicle toward the retractable building there. Of course, the fireball is caused by the hydrogen gas, because Delta IV Heavy is powered by, or fueled by, hydrogen and oxygen, and the hydrogen begins flowing before the oxygen, and being the lightest gas in existence, the hydrogen rises up the side of the rocket, and on ignition, that hydrogen interacts with the ambient oxygen in the atmosphere and combusts, creating this iconic fireball that we're not really getting a great view of here, but could probably see it better from the opposite side. But the launch was flawless, as usual. Now, I think this may have been actually the very first time that a Delta IV Heavy, they had some lag during the broadcast, but this may have been the first time that a Delta IV Heavy launched on the first launch attempt. Now, there's normally multiple scrubs prior to, like even Parker Solar Probe, which launched back in 2018, when I was first getting started with the whole streaming thing. It was actually my first launch stream was the Parker Solar Probe. Even that one was scrubbed, but but this launch went off without a hitch, no scrubs, no delays, and in fact, if we look at this, if we look at this graphic posted by ULA and retweeted by Tori Bruno, the president of ULA, they are right on target, as well as their previous launches. It's a very accurate launch system. It gets payloads to precisely where they need to be, which is great. Unfortunately, it's quite expensive, and none of it is reusable. But yeah, we all know that story. Moving on to, also on Monday, a Chinese Long March 6 launched 9 satellites from Taiyuan Satellite Launch Center in China's northern Shaanxi province, including Crew-1, which is a synthetic aperture radar remote sensing satellite, and optical imaging satellites Crew-4 and Foshan-1.
Attention pour les décomptes finales.
That's not a long march. That's that's Vega. That's Vega. I got out of, oh, see, my browser's playing tricks on me. Here is your long march. Yeah, I thought I knew something was wrong as soon as I heard French, because they don't speak that in China. I mean, I'm sure a few people do, but certainly not on their yeah. So then on Tuesday, let's make sure I got the right tab here. All right. So what happened was I'm now using Vivaldi as my presentation browser. I'd never even heard of Vivaldi before, but apparently it's made by the same people as Opera. But the reason why I use different browsers, I use Firefox, I use Opera, I use Vivaldi. I used to use Brave, but I uninstalled that one. But anyway, I was having issues with Opera because anytime I would have 2 different browsers full screen, let's say I would have an Opera window showing one scene and then a Firefox window showing another scene that I would switch between. As soon as I switched to the other browser, Opera would go blank. And so if I was trying to stream two different things at one time, let's say, last Wednesday I was streaming 3 different launches at the same time. There was an Ariane space and a Chinese launch and a SpaceX launch all happening at the same time. I was having major problems with my browsers because anytime I would switch to the Firefox view so that I could see what was happening on that screen, it would blank out the Opera view and one of my streams would go dark. So anyway, so I installed Vivaldi and it's behaving better. So yay. All right, moving on to Tuesday. The Russian Progress MS-14 cargo module, or cargo spacecraft, undocked from the ISS and deorbited in a fiery inferno. So Progress brings, it is a venerable craft that has been bringing cargo up to the ISS since the beginning, and this is actually sped up by about 2 times. But, wow, it looks faster. Anyway, some interesting views there as Progress departed the ISS. So that one was actually not broadcast by NASA, so I missed the live stream on that one. It was only broadcast by Roscosmos, and being a human, I just overlooked that one. Then on Wednesday, NASA conducted a hot fire test of a Rocketdyne developmental RS-25 engine as part of the Retrofit 2 series to evaluate new engine components and reduce operational risk. The burn lasted a full 10 minutes and 50 seconds. Now, this is an engine that's in development for use in future Artemis missions. And this, I believe, is regular speed. Yes, it is. Here, let me give you some of that audio. So you saw them gimbaling the engine there. So this test was actually longer than the 4-engine test they did of the production, or the sort of flight-proven vintage RS-25 engines a few weeks ago that will be flying on Artemis 1. This was actually a couple minutes longer than that test, but this is a new developmental engine. So the old engines, they were designed to be reusable to fly on the space shuttle. The new developmental engines are not designed to be reusable because the Artemis missions won't be reusing anything. And they're also designed to be more efficient and cheaper to produce and all of that. So then Wednesday evening was a madhouse. Like I said, I had 3 concurrent launch streams going on, and juggling them was, I guess it worked, but it was stressful for me, but we got through it and we survived. First up was an Arianespace Vega launch with Pleiades number 3, which is the first of 4 Pleiades Neo 3, which is the first of 4 Pleiades Neo high-res Earth observation satellites by Airbus, the big aerospace company. There were also multiple small-sat ride shares who tagged along for the ride. Now, this was the first Vega launch since the loss of a Vega rocket last November, I think it was, which in turn was the second 2 out of 3 Vegas had failed in the past couple of years, in like 18 months. And so this was sort of their return to flight, and it went off without a hitch. It worked fine. So congratulations to Arianespace on that.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, unité, top. Allumage P80 et décollage V18.
We actually got to see it for a little bit, which is nice, because being at the northern edge of the Amazon rainforest, the Kourou Launch Center gets a lot of clouds, and so often we only get to see the Arianespace Kourou launches for a few seconds before they're shrouded by cloud. But I was expecting the launch to go up, and then that was it, but the broadcast just kept going and going and going. They had this cool virtual reality thing they did with the studio where they were projecting a 3D Vega rocket in front of the presenters, which is a nifty use of technology. But yeah, I'm more old school. I'm not a big fan of the chatty marketing, presenters that we're getting more of in the launch industry. I like the sort of dry, minimalist coverage of yore. But yeah, the broadcast just kept going and going and going, and eventually it just seemed to sort of freeze, yeah, like you see, these telemetry numbers are changing, but the timer is, I don't know. Anyway, so I eventually just had to cut off the broadcast because it seemed like all their deployments were successful, but they seem to have left the building. I'm not sure what happened with that. Then trifecta number 2 was China's big launch, a beefy Long March 5B, the B stands for beefy, with Tianhe, the 25-ton core module of the new Tiangong space station, launched from Wenchang Satellite Launch Center on an island in the south of China. This is their sort of commercial launch center, and it's more high visibility. It's on the coast. It's their only coastal launch center. Their other 3-ish main sites are far to the inland. Wenchang is where their Long March 5 big boy rockets launch from. So let's check that out.
What an extraordinary moment. All right. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition.
All right, lift off.
And liftoff. What an incredible view. That is the sound of history. A historic space flight carrying the Tianhe module, the core module of China's space station. That itself is history in the making, a major milestone of China's space program with the ambition to explore deep space. Not even gravity contains humanity now. And Dr. Yang, we are looking...
All right. So now kudos to the Chinese Space Agency for, or whomever was responsible for providing an English language broadcast. That was very useful because quite often with the Chinese launches, I mean, most of them, you know, the military launches, we don't have any kind of live coverage of. But even the Wenchang launches that are more high visibility, when there is a live stream, a lot of times, well, usually there are only Chinese language, coverage. And this time we actually got a nice, informative English language broadcast. So thank you to China for that. The launch was beautiful. The rocket did great. And see here if we can see. See if we can see.
When are we going to hit maximum Q?
Separation.
Yes, actually speaking, at this moment is already supersonic.
That is the
Poof. Okay, yeah, it looks like the camera got covered with rocket goo. And we've got fairing sap. Boop boop. Yeah, and as usual for the fairings, of course, fairings is basically everything on a rocket is designed to be as light as possible, and that includes the fairings. And so typically when fairings are jettisoned, they wobble, they go whoop whoop whoop, and they flex, just because of the mechanism that is used to detach them. But the payload was deployed, the Tianhe core module of the new Tiangong space station. However, and this isn't covered in the broadcast here. I mean, wasn't covered in the live stream, but the core stage or the core booster of the Long March 5B rocket failed to execute its deorbit burn successfully, and so it is this very large, like 70 meter, 70 meters, is that right? Well, in any case, whatever the size is, I'd have to look it up, but it's very large core booster that will be deorbiting in an uncontrolled manner in an unknown location at some point in the next few days or weeks. And so it's being monitored closely because it's a big hunk of material, and it will be deorbiting. It's not going to stay on orbit. But so normally first stages don't reach orbit. Normally they don't achieve orbital velocity, and they just splash downrange, in the ocean. But in this case, the first stage of the Long March 5B did achieve orbital velocity, and so it did enter an orbit, but it'll be crashing or splashing down somewhere. So watch out, because it could be in your backyard. I mean, Earth is 70% water, so chances are it's just going to splash down somewhere, but it still presents a risk because it'll be coming down in an uncontrolled manner. Now, this isn't China's first space station. The Tiangong-1 space laboratory, it was considered too small to really be called a station, was launched back in 2011 with a planned operational life of 2 years. Here, let's get some of those sweet Earth views. When the last crew departed Tiangong-1 in 2013, the lab was put into sleep mode, and they planned to keep it on orbit for a few more years to study the effects on the lab's materials. Then in 2016, China reported that they could no longer communicate with Tiangong-1, and the mission was ended while the lab's orbit degraded to an uncontrolled re-entry in 2018. And so that was Tiangong-1. Now Tiangong-2 launched in 2016 and orbited until its controlled re-entry in 2019. Now both of those, Tiangong-1 and 2, were only intended to be stepping stones and test beds for this new large modular space station, which was just launched, or the core module of which was just launched, which will represent a more permanent presence in space for China. Now, I don't have any knowledge of whether China has any international partnerships or plans to collaborate internationally with other, like, to welcome aboard crew members from other countries or anything like that, like we do with the ISS, but I guess we shall see. Panel of experts there. Okay. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, at the same time, this is trifecta number 3, this was all happening at the same time on Wednesday, SpaceX Falcon 9 launched the 25th batch of Starlink satellites, bringing the total number of Starlinks in orbit to 1,441.
Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff. Godspeed, Apollo 11 Michael Collins. May the pursuit of exploration live on.
Okay, I want to rewind this just a little bit. I want you to check something out. All right.
May the pursuit of...
All right. So from this view, let me slow this way down to like a quarter speed, and I want you to look at the exhaust plume and the ripples that go through it. Those are shock waves propagating through the exhaust, and they look kind of crazy. So what I really want to do is, and I'm sure that you know the sort of the usual suspects, the folks that set up their cameras and video cameras at launch sites, you know, the photographers, videographers, the content creators, whatever, influencers, probably have, you know, ultra HD, ultra high frame rate footage of this stuff, but it's not always made available to we, the peons of the public. So I would really love to get my hands on some really high frame rate, really high quality video of some of these launches, so you can see what's happening, you know, in those in that exhaust plume with some greater detail. But all right, so let's see. So good launch, good landing. Actually, the landing was, this was embarrassing. I actually screwed up. So here, check this out. This is silly.
Stage 1 landing.
Let's increase that to normal speed again. We don't need anybody drunk on this mission.
Stage 1 landing burn.
The landing burn has begun. Let's watch and see if this Falcon 9 can land on our drone ship. Just read the instructions. And a really cool onboard view.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Isn't that a great view? That is the greatest view ever. Now, what happened was, remember that opera problem I was telling you about? That's exactly what happened. Right before, I was juggling 3 different streams, and right before landing, right before the Falcon booster landed, I made the mistake of switching to, or rather bringing to the front, one of my other browsers, and like I was, you know, clueless at the time to the fact that it blanked out my Starlink video, so nobody got to watch the landing, and everybody in the chat was like, "What the heck, man?" But well, these things happen. So, all right, moving on to happier things. Oh yes, I also need to mention that also on Wednesday, April 28th, a legend passed. Astronaut Michael Collins, who of course piloted the command module around the moon while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the surface in July 1969, passed away at the age of 90. He was a great man, a humble man, did not seek the limelight, but he was one of the greats, and he passed. But he lived a good long life. Now Buzz is still with us. Of those three astronauts, Buzz is the only one still around. But I think they were all born in the same year, so that would make Buzz about 90 as well. But in any case, I wanted to give him an honorable mention because honorable he most certainly is. Then on yesterday, Crew Dragon Crew-1 Resilience crew members, Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, Soichi Noguchi, and Mike Hopkins returned home after 6 months aboard the ISS. And here you can see them at 2 times speed, sort of preparing to close the hatch. Now, this wasn't the first time that a Crew Dragon returned from space. That was actually, or that a Crew Dragon returned from space with a crew. That would have been the Demo 2 mission with Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. But this was the first regular expedition crew that has returned from space in a Crew Dragon. And it was also a nighttime splashdown, which is noteworthy because, well, first of all, the U.S. hasn't, I mean, there haven't been very many splashdowns of humans in a very long time. The last nighttime splashdown was actually Apollo 8 in 1968. But, you know, the space shuttle didn't splash down, and Soyuz doesn't splash down. So yeah, this was the first nighttime splashdown since 1968. And it was also the longest, by far, it was the longest American spacecraft mission by a factor of 2, blowing away the record of 84 days set by Skylab 4 back in 1974, almost 50 years ago. So what, 47 years ago. The space shuttle, now bear in mind, the space shuttle launched many expedition missions to the ISS, which was also an American spacecraft, but the shuttle itself never stayed docked to the ISS for very long, only like a couple of weeks. Prior to, you know, and then a different shuttle would come up and pick up the crew to return them 6 months later, or however many months their expedition tour was. Prior to Crew Dragon, the only other crew vehicle that stayed on station for the full expedition length was the trusty old Soyuz. So, now if we scoot forward to, I just wanted to show you this segment from when they were re-entering. This view is an infrared camera view from an airplane that had launched, that's specifically designed to track incoming aerial objects, whatever, incoming capsules. And look at those clouds fly by. I mean, this thing is boogieing on the other side of those clouds. And the plane was doing a bang-up job of keeping the thing in frame and centered. But the EDL, or EDS, I guess you could call it, entry, descent, and splashdown, was textbook perfect. Let's get to the look at, oh, here. Look at this view. This is from a one of the fast boats that were approaching the splashdown site. How cool is that? Some sort of infrared, I guess. But and then splash down. So the reason, of course, why the parachutes look dark is because they are much cooler than Crew Dragon, which has just, you know, been toasted by 3,500 degrees of re-entry plasma. But here we go. Okay. Crisp bluish. And there it goes. And then we only got to see one of the astronauts come out, and I wasn't quite sure why they did this, but so it takes a little while for the crew, what is it called? Go Navigator, I guess, was their recovery ship, to back up to the Crew Dragon. And first they have to, well, first the fast boats go out there and they do you know, checks of the air to make sure there are no hypergolic fuels contaminating the area, because the both the Super Draco and the regular Draco engines use hypergolics, nitrogen tetroxide and monomethyl or dimethyl or whatever hydrazine fuels, and you know, if there are any of those lingering in the area, then they need to let those dissipate. But in any case, so the ship backs up to the Crew Dragon, hooks it on this this arm that then rotates up and deposits the Crew Dragon capsule in the nest. So it's the Dragon's nest, they call it. And you know, and then they extract the crew if the you know, there aren't any toxics in the air. Now, we only got to see one crew member come out, which I believe was
I think that's Mike Hopkins.
Commander was the mission. He was looking, he's all excited. But then, as the next crew member came out, okay, they've got a stretcher, a ramp in there. Then they started bringing out, I didn't quite see who that was, and then they switched the video feed off. I don't think he's injured. I'm not sure why they switched away from that view and then never went back to it. So subsequently, the only views we got were either of the presenters, as you see, or
at 11:57 p.m. Pacific time. Following that successful splashdown, we saw SpaceX recovery experts move in.
Well, that's actually it. That was the last image we saw of Crew Dragon. Not even from the backside was that second crew member coming out. So, like, I don't know if he had, you know, gotten a little roughed up during the landing or what, but I think all the crew members are fine. I did see a photo of them, all four of them looking, you know, happy and giving the thumbs up after having landed, but it was kind of weird for them to switch away from it like that. You know, I mean, like when a Soyuz crew lands in Kazakhstan, they the ground crews, you know, extract them from the Soyuz capsule and physically carry them, like 4-man lift or 2-man lift or whatever, to these chairs, you know, where they sort of cart them around in chairs or stretchers, and that's sort of just their normal operations. But I was actually surprised to see the crew member there get out and do his little dance, because after 6 months in space, standing up in 1G has to be a bit of a challenge, even if you've been exercising every day. But Scott Dufferlin says he might have vomited or something like that. That's possible. I mean, you know, they're well trained, they're highly trained, and they've all been to, well, Victor. This was Victor's first time to space, but everybody else had been to space before, some of them multiple times, and you know, so it's fine. They're back home, and they're going to spend a few days in quarantine, because when you're up there in 0G, it's not just your bones and muscles that atrophy. It's also your bones atrophy. Your bones weaken and your muscles atrophy, but also your immune system weakens up there, and so they're, going to be given, I think, about 10 days, and then they're going to be given their COVID vaccine first dose. So they want to make sure that their immune systems are back up to a normal level before they hit them with that. I just had my second dose last week. I was very sick last week, but yeah. So let's see, anything else? So that's it for last week. Now, looking ahead to this week, looks a lot lighter on the schedule. In fact, let me zoom in a little bit. Now, you'll have to pardon that huge red thing on the left there. That was actually the tail end of the Crew-1 return and splashdown. That the event time on my calendar got a little wonky. But so, anywho, this week, on possibly Monday or Tuesday, May 3rd or 4th, SpaceX might launch their Starship SN-15 prototype. It's already been delayed a few times. They've done a static fire, but the launch has been delayed a few times. So stay tuned for a more definite date and time on that. There are TFRs currently in place, but as we've seen many times, those can get retracted at any time. So then on Tuesday, May 4th at 3:01 p.m. Eastern, 19:01 GMT, SpaceX will launch the 26th batch of Starlink satellites, bringing the total number in orbit to 1,501. So they will have broken 1,500 satellites out of. Remember, there's only something like 6,000 or 6,000 and change satellites in orbit around Earth total. A large chunk of which aren't even operational anymore. So Starlink represents a huge percentage of those overall number of satellites. Also, May 4th represents the 3rd year streamiversary of my very own Starman's Cosmic Journey 24/7 music stream. I started streaming Starman on May 4th, 2018, and he's been streaming ever since, with only brief interruptions due to internet outage or power outage. And even when I moved houses last month, I made sure that Starman stayed up. And so he is the sort of the cosmic microwave background radiation of this channel, I guess you could say. Usually doesn't have a whole ton of concurrent viewers, but that's okay because we have a healthy little community of space enthusiasts in there that it's like a family. So thank you all for sticking with Starman all these years. Also, may the 4th be with you, and may the 4th be with Starman. I'd like to extend a special thanks and welcome to new channel members, Jeff Weiss, or Weiss, and noblerooster, as well as Astro Joe, and a couple of returning members as well. And a special shout out to my Patreons over at patreon.com/rawspace. Patreon is often overlooked because it's not integrated right into the YouTube interface, but it's actually a more efficient platform for supporting creators because Patreon only takes an 8% cut of donations, whereas YouTube takes a whopping 30%. That's right, for every $1 you contribute to a YouTube channel via membership fee or super chat, the creator only gets to keep 70 cents. YouTube memberships are still a great thing to have, and they're much more visible than third-party options like Patreon or PayPal. But supporters should know how their hard-earned contribution dollars are being allocated. So just be aware that that's a thing that exists. YouTube takes a big portion, 30% of everything that gets contributed. So, on to your questions. First of all, let me tap my keys a little more, because that's fun. Alright, let me move this over. Whoops. That was the wrong window. There we go. Alright. Okay, so thank you, Chris V, for compiling these questions. Going on back to Toon van der Paas. Hi, Ra. Do you have any idea about the landing thrusters on the SpaceX Moonlander? Personally, I expect hypergolic thrusters because of the easy fuel storage and the simple engine design. Okay, so I had, this is now before I answer Toon van der Paas. I had an incident during the my intro to the Crew-1 undocking or whatever, the Crew-1 live stream, marathon live stream, where I had I was having to fight back a coughing fit because you remember how I mentioned I was very sick last week. Well, it did a number on my, it was not COVID, it was just a regular old viral cold. But in any case, it did a number on my throat. And I got this terrible tickle in my throat, and I was sitting here going beet red, looking like an idiot, trying not to hack my head off, you know, with coughs during the live stream. But so anyway, I'm trying to avoid that here because I feel a little bit of a tickle. And it happens when I've been talking too much. So anyway, Toon van der Paas. I have no personal knowledge of what SpaceX has planned for their lunar Starship landing thrusters. I don't know, because SpaceX, they tend to like a tool that can do multiple things. And so, you know, for example, the you know, both the Starship and the Falcon 9 boosters, the same engines, both launch them and land them. So off the top of my head, I don't recall the low-end throttle ability of Raptor, of space-optimized Raptor engines. If those would be able to throttle down low enough to be able to land on the moon, because of course a lot less thrust is needed to land on the moon than, for example, in Boca Chica, Texas. But or if it would be, you know, if they are so if the Raptors can be throttled down to the point where they would be a viable landing, you know, thruster, then I would just expect them to use the Raptors. Otherwise, you know, otherwise, yes, I agree that I would expect that they would use hypergolics. You know, there's also the question of because of the liquid methane and the liquid oxygen, their longevity in space, you know, because they're liquids, they're cryogenic liquids, and they need to be kept cryogenic, or they're going to expand. You know, they need to be kept in at very low temperatures, or they're going to expand and burst tanks and things like that. And it takes energy to keep things at very cold temperatures. So the longevity of cryogenics in space is limited, and so if Starship, for example, if the lunar Starship is expected to hang out either in lunar orbit or attached to the gateway, if that's still a thing, for some period of time, then again, the easy solution there would be to use hypergolics, because they're stable at room temperature essentially for extended periods, and you know, they only need to be kept from freezing basically. They don't need to be maintained at some crazy temperature. So there's a lot of, you know, maybe kind of sort of guesstimation, but I don't like to speculate too much. But those are just some of the factors to consider in that landing system. But I do know that there has been some drama in the realm of lunar landing contracts, because of course SpaceX was granted the contract for the HLS, the Human Landing System, for Artemis, and Blue Origin didn't like that, and they filed a a complaint with NASA, against NASA, a legal complaint against NASA regarding that, and I guess NASA put a hold on SpaceX's contract. So until they figure out, until that is resolved, that conflict is resolved. But who knows how this is going to pan out, but I don't have any more information on that. I just know that Blue Origin complained and NASA actually responded and apparently put a hold on things. But yeah, I'll try to gather some more information and if it's available and let you know next week. All right. Arkansas Grown. Raw Space, do you think the splashdown gonna be like today? The splashdown of... Okay, I don't recall the context of that question. The splashdown of what going to be like today? I'm not sure. Chris Whitelock. Hi, Raw Space. NASA has annoyed me with the Perseverance rover this week, talking about strange track marks behind the rover and the latest picture of a mound covered in sand. Strange track marks? I honestly, this week has been busy. I haven't had the opportunity to see what's up with Perseverance. I don't think they've done any more Ingenuity flights. I think I would have heard about those. And I haven't kept close tabs on what Perseverance is up to. But I mean, if there are tracks behind the rover, then they are the rover's tracks. There's only one thing moving around up there, and Ingenuity. Well, two things. Ingenuity goes up and down, but it doesn't leave tracks. And the only thing leaving tracks is Percy. As far as a mound covered in sand, I haven't seen that picture, so I'm not sure. Maybe the wind blew over. Maybe the wheel rolled through a clump of dusty regolith, and it was unstable enough that it sort of collapsed to the side and covered up one of the tracks. I don't know. Just spitballing. Mark Desire, today I read Blue Origin protested against how SpaceX got the lunar landing contract, and that SpaceX for the moment has stopped working on it. Yes, that's my understanding also. MVM Motovlog Music, the new Chinese space station looks incredible. I've seen images inside one of the modules. Looks great. I did see a video briefly showing the inside of a mock-up of the Changhe module. I didn't have that queued up for this Space Week episode, but I think it exists if you go out there and search for it. But yeah, that's good. It's not going to be as big as the ISS, but it's going to be a lot bigger than Tiangong 1 or 2 once they get it modularized. Latanya Smithy, great show last night, and what are you drinking? Well, first of all, thank you, and secondly, this is just some kofefe, some coffee to lubricate the old pipes, as it were. Mark Desire, I believe in June, the first 3 Chinese taikonauts, which is what the Chinese space travelers are called, are expected in the first module of their station. That is possible. I haven't checked the Chinese schedule, but well, let me see. Tianhe, Okay, launch. Tiangong 3. Let's see. Laboratory crewed vessel. Shenzhou. Okay. Last launch was in 2016. 2021? No? No, I'm not immediately seeing an answer to that question of when they're going to be launching the first crew to their space station. But now the Chinese space station is being built a little different than the ISS, because with the ISS, the core... Let's see, the very first ISS module was delivered by a Russian launch, I believe, not the space shuttle. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so it wouldn't have been people occupying it at that time. But let's see. Ray Han. The website has a VR type animate. Oh, so this is referring to the Chinese Tiangong website. Has a VR type animation for the interior of their part of the space station, which is pretty cool. That is nifty. Also, Ray Han, there's a great video of the space shuttle launch. This is regarding the exhaust shock waves. There's a great video of the space shuttle launch, I think, that shows everything in great detail and high FPS. I've seen something like that, and I may have seen that very video that you're referring to. But the sound waves from a rocket launch are incredible. They basically rip the air apart, and they would rip the launch pad apart too if they didn't have their sound suppression water systems pumping out, you know, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water to basically suppress the sound from the engines. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. Barrett, do we know what fuel the Tianhe is using for fuel for the main propulsion engines? I was going to assume a hypergolic. So I've got the Tianhe page up here. Fuel. Okay. Tianzhu resupply ships will replenish fuel fuel for the module's propulsion systems for station keeping. Because everything up there is subject to atmospheric drag, even at 250 or 300 miles up. Let's see. That's the only mention of fuel on the page. So this is the Tiangong fuel. Nope. Maybe it's a secret. It is a Chinese state secret. Either that, or somebody just didn't bother putting the information on Wikipedia. Because, yeah. So, but a good question. What fuel do they use? There's also frequent questions about what kind of thrusters the ISS has to keep itself aloft, and it typically uses attached spacecraft, such as Progress or Cygnus, to boost it in altitude as it experiences that atmospheric drag. MVM Motovlog Music. Any chance Long March 5 will burn up on re-entry? My wife is scared. Well, fear not, my good lady. The chances that Long March 5 will re-enter over you is very, very, very small. The Earth is a big place. But it is a big hunk of burning rocket. And sorry, I'm stupid. But yeah, it is a big core rocket stage. And so I would expect that that not all of it would burn up on re-entry. or that large chunks of it would reach the ground. That's what I would expect, or would reach the surface. You know, and again, statistically speaking, it's most likely that it's going to splash down somewhere because most of the Earth is ocean. But they're going to monitor it closely, and once they determine where it's going to come down, they'll inform people accordingly. Because China doesn't, you know, China definitely does not want the bad press of, you know, landing a rocket booster in the middle of Seattle or something like that. All right. Oh, Chris V himself is asking, how did I move without Starman stopping? So I have more than one computer. So you may recall last year in the springtime, it was March of 2020, I built a new computer called Nebula. I did it on a live stream. It took me 6 hours. It wasn't a speed build. I was taking my time. But in any case, the computer I had, my main computer, my sort of gaming computer prior to that, got relegated to TV duty. It became my home theater PC, you know, because I haven't had TV service or cable TV in many, many years, and I've always just used, or for many years anyway, have used a computer to get my content and display it up on the TV, including movies and streaming shows and things like that. So previously, my home theater PC was this micro form factor piece of junk that was not doing well. So once my my gaming computer, my main computer, got bumped when I built my computer last year, I moved it to the TV room. So I've had multiple computers hanging around the house. And so Starman actually streams not from the computer that I'm sitting at, but rather from the TV computer, which I just keep on all the time. And so when I moved, I left that TV computer, running and streaming Starman while I moved my main new computer to the new house. Once I got set up, I started streaming Starman from the new computer and then brought my old computer back over. And that's how I did it. W4IT, or Wait, says, Raw Space, don't you think that SpaceX will develop a methalox for easy on-orbit refueling? So methalox, methane, oxygen, methane and liquid oxygen, I am not that familiar with the phrase methalox. I have heard it. Is it a substance that's separate from liquid methane and liquid oxygen? Is it some sort of fuel that's different than those separate cryogenic fuels? I don't know. So I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm just a space enthusiast. So I glean information. Questions are asked, and I find the answers. But that one I don't have an answer to. So I don't really know anything about methalox. I would bet you that at least a couple of my moderators do know exactly what that means and exactly what whether that is something that SpaceX would develop. But I myself couldn't tell you without without doing some research, which I'm sure I will do, because I've seen the word come up a couple times, and I'm curious about it. So, and finally, Canon Lucas, hi Raw Space, cheers from Chile. Glad to have you. When will it be finished, the new Vulcan rocket from ULA? So Vulcan Centaur. Let's see if it's on the launch schedule. I do not see a Vulcan rocket on the launch schedule. I'm not sure when it's going to be finished. I don't know if, like, for example, there's the rocket itself, but there's also the engines. The rocket is from ULA, but the engines are from, well, the first stage engines are from Blue Origin. The Vulcan is going to use the BE-4 engine, which is also the engine that'll be used on Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket. And now the BE-3 is a small engine, a much smaller engine that's used on New Shepard. But BE-4 will power the Vulcan first stage. And I'm not sure about their timeline. I mean, they post about it occasionally. You know, ULA is pretty vocal on social media, especially Tory Bruno, their president. He is quite responsive on Twitter. But, yeah, I'm not sure. It's not on the launch schedule yet, though, so that's something to bear in mind. All right. I seem to be caught up with the questions. Let me switch on over to the live chat. Canon Lucas says he thinks the Zvezda module has emergency thrusters. I think there are some hypergolic thrusters on the ISS itself, but I think that they reserve those. They probably reserve those for emergencies because the hypergolics, you know, they have a long shelf life. I think they preferentially use the thrusters from attached craft such as Progress, supply modules, or cargo craft. Okay. Hey, Appable, there you are. You would be my top pick for knowing what the heck methalox is. Just an abbreviation for methane and oxygen. Thank you for that clarification. So, I mean, it's been SpaceX's plan all along to have on-orbit refueling. You know, so if you recall back a few years to their early Starship, or at the time it was called their BFR or even ITS, like renders, you know, they would launch one up there, like a refueling version up there, and they would launch another Starship up there, or another BFR up there, and it would dock with a refueling ship and get refueled and move on to Mars or whatever. So it's been SpaceX's plan all along to do on-orbit refueling. I do not know if they have made any progress along those lines. I think they're focusing on just getting up and down from the ground at this point with Starship in a reliable manner. So thus far, they have not had a fully successful Starship test flight. I mean, they've had mostly successful test flights. They've even had a test flight that landed without blowing up, but then it blew up a minute later because it was damaged on landing. So, you know, so they're taking things one step at a time. But I do expect that they will develop an on-orbit refueling capability once they get these starships up in orbit and flying around the Earth. Okay, checking out a link. Somebody posted. It's a lot of words. I'm not going to read all that right now. All right, so I think that's going to wrap it up for this week. If I missed anything, I'm sorry. But thank you all for coming and for hanging out. And I look forward to seeing you in the next stream, whenever that may be, whether it's SN15 or the Starship launch. But until then, take care, keep it raw, and I will catch you later. And I'm sorry Bennu didn't make an appearance today, but he's around here somewhere. But anywho, oh, hello. Hey, come here. Come here. Hey, Bennu. Oh, he's punching me. Oh, my God. Oh, psh. He's punching me. Oh, God. Oh, he does not like to be held. And he's gone. Oh, my first cat was a cuddler. He would sit on my chest and, like, push his face up in my face. And, Bennu, he's just a little spitfire. He is funny and animated and entertaining, but he's not a cuddler. He doesn't like to be touched. So anyway, Bennu says farewell until next time.